and welcome to the Hillbilly Kitchen. Today I'm going to show you how to turn this into this. We're going to take our bone-in raw chicken and we're going to cook it so that you have plenty of broth and plenty of chicken to make all your favorite recipes. Now you can use this for any chicken soup recipe. You can use the stock in other soup recipes. This is good in casseroles. It's good even for chicken salad. You can take the chicken and make chicken salad if you have extra when you're done. But what I'm starting with here is about 4 pounds of bone-in, skin-on chicken, and that's important. Now, I like white meat in my recipes. If you like dark meat or a mix, you can certainly use a whole cut-up chicken or whatever. But this is about 4 pounds. It's 3 chicken breasts, and it will do just about any recipe. I'm seasoning this with my favorite spices. Now, you can put other stuff in this if you like it, but here's something to keep in mind. Anything that you add to your chicken at this point is going to affect the outcome of your recipe. Whatever you're using the chicken and the broth in, it's going to have these spices in it. I really like the onion powder, salt, and pepper, and I always put a little lemon juice and a little honey in my chicken. You can leave any of those out. You can substitute for other stuff, but that's the flavor that I prefer in my chicken in my recipes. And I've got a couple tablespoons of butter here, and we're going to use that to keep our chicken from sticking to the pan, and it will also help add some flavor. And you also need about 3 cups of water. Now, what we're going to end up with is between 4 and 5 cups of broth. But you have to have the water. We're going to add that after we cook the chicken for about an hour. So let's go over to the stove and I'm going to show you how I start this. Okay, the first thing is we want to turn our stove on just a little bit below medium. And we're going to put our butter in. Now you want to use a pan ideally that is big enough around that you can lay all your chicken around in the bottom of the pan. Out of these 3 pots I have here, this one is the best because the chicken's spread out more in it and it browns better and it cooks more evenly. But you have to have a pan that is big enough to hold your chicken plus the 3 cups of water that we're going to add. So we don't want to put our chicken in here until this butter is melted, and you want to make sure it coats the bottom of the pan good and kind of the sides just a little bit where the chicken's going to touch, because it will stick to the pan and it'll make a mess and you don't want to have to clean that up. Now, what I'm going to do is I want to put some seasoning on the skin side of this chicken. So I'm going to drizzle just a little bit of honey on here. Now, in this 4 pounds of chicken, I'm not going to use more than 2 tablespoons of honey because I don't want candied chicken. I just want to give it a little bit of flavor. And I'm going to cover it really good with onion powder. And you could use a whole onion in this. That would be fine, or a chopped up onion. But because I'm making the stock, I really prefer the onion powder. I'll probably use a couple teaspoons of onion powder in this because that's going to give the stock a lot of flavor. And you want to cover your chicken breast fairly well with salt. Oh, don't forget the pepper. Now, my butter's pretty close to melted. Take it and wipe the sides of your pan just a little bit again because the chicken's definitely going to touch the sides of this pot here. Now I'm going to put this in my pan, turn skin side down. And I'm doing that because I want that skin to brown a little bit. That really adds a lot of flavor to the stock, and it'll add a lot of flavor to the final recipe. When you're handling raw chicken too, make sure anything the chicken touches goes into the sink immediately. You don't want to leave that sitting on the countertop or spill any of that juice on your countertop and have cross-contamination going on, because chicken quite often does have salmonella in it, which can be very dangerous. You see, this pot here is not ideal because it's not really big enough to get all of my chicken down in it so that the skin can brown good, but it'll work. Okay, I'm going to drizzle a little more honey on the back side of my chicken, the bone side of it. But you don't want to do too much, maybe a tablespoon and a half or so at the most, because you're not making candy chicken. And again, I'm going to do the salt and the pepper and the onion powder so that both sides have been seasoned. You do want to be pretty generous with the onion powder. And if there's other spices you like I said, feel free to add them. And I'm going to pour my lemon juice over this side. There wasn't really any need in putting it on the other side because it would just run off when I flipped the chicken down in the pan. Now, if you took some time to marinate it, you could put it, let it sit and marinate, but you really don't have to marinate this. You're going to cook it about 2 hours, so it's going to be tender. Okay, you want to make sure you have a lid that fits on your pan tight because you have to hold the steam in the pan. Okay, we start this in the pan with the skin side down, and we're going to cook it about 45 minutes that way. Keeping it on that medium-low heat. After about 45 minutes, we're going to flip it over. And you can see the skin is slightly browned here. It's not going to get super brown because you're cooking it with a lid on it. And you're going to cook it about another 15 or 20 minutes. So you want to cook it at least an hour like this, just in the juices and the spices. Once it's cooked about an hour on the medium-low heat, we're going to add our 3 cups of water. I'm telling you, this is super simple. Put your lid back on, and when this comes to a boil, then you're going to turn it all the way down to low and let it sit there and simmer for at least an hour. You really cannot overcook this. And once you've done this, you're never going to buy that sodium-filled MSG potion that they sell in the grocery store as canned chicken stock. Your recipes will taste so much better, but you do need to remember something. There's not very much salt in this, and if you're used to using canned chicken stock and you make this and you put it in a recipe, you're probably going to want a little more salt than what you're used to using if you use the canned chicken stock, because this doesn't have very much in it at all. So this is going to sit here, cook for about another hour on low. Now leave it on the medium low until it comes back to a boil, which won't take too long, 5 minutes or so. Turn it down to low. And after about an hour, this is what you have. Now you can see this is a really nice, rich looking broth. My chicken is certainly tender. When you take it out of your pan, you want to be very careful because it's going to fall apart and you'll drop it back down in the pan and you'll splash yourself. And that's never good. Okay. Now, to prepare this for recipes, like we're going to use this chicken in a chicken pot pie. We're going to use it in some creamy chicken soup, which is absolutely wonderful. It's Alex's favorite soup in the whole wide world. And we're going to use it in some chicken noodle soup and a chicken casserole and some other stuff. But to prepare it for those recipes, you want to take the skin off and the bones out. Like I said, you can also use this in chicken salad, use the stock and other stuff. If you have extra stock, you can use it. It's really good for lots of recipes. But I'm going to show you how easy this comes off. You just take a fork and scrape it and the skin comes right off. and the chicken, the bones will come right out of the chicken. You might want to let it cool a few minutes. It is still pretty warm, but when it's hot, the bones really fall out easy. But you can see there how easy that comes off. And just discard the skin and the bones because you don't really need those. You've got all the flavor out. And then you have it at this point. You can either shred it or chop it depending on what your recipe calls for. And I'm going to show you how to do this broth. If you don't need all the broth and you want to save it, the broth can be frozen or it can even be canned. You know, you do need to be careful when you're canning meats and you really need to know what you're doing. So freezing it is the safer way to go. You just need a freezer bag, a Ziploc freezer bag, and you need some kind of container to put your freezer bag in to hold it so that you can pour the stock in it. And again, I would let it cool a little bit before you do this. You don't want to handle this while it's still boiling. And you can use a little metal strainer to strain it, or you can leave all the stuff in it. It's just up to you. If you want the really clear stock like what you get when you buy it in a store, just get one of these little metal strainers, and it's super simple to strain. You just pour it through the strainer. There's really not much in that. It's just a little bit of chicken fat and stuff that came out. And you can see it doesn't even make a mess in your pan. Isn't that nice? Now, if you're making soup and you want to use this in your soup, at this point, don't bother straining it. Don't bother taking it out of your pan or anything. Just chop your chicken up and then throw it back in your pot to make your soup. But if you want to save the stock to use it for something later, you can do it, like I said, in just a Ziploc bag. You can seal it up, put it in the freezer, and it's good for at least 6 months. Or you can put it in a glass jar like I did here. You can get these canning funnels. They have them at Walmart and everywhere. They're like $1. But you can use a canning funnel, and that little strainer fits right on this. And you can put it in a glass jar, seal it up, put it in the refrigerator, and it will be good for at least 5 days. As a general rule, I don't like to keep meat in the refrigerator longer than 5 days. It's kept me alive for 50 years, so I think 5 days is a good rule of thumb on any kind of leftover meat. But this would be considered a leftover if you're saving it, if you cook it and you're saving it in the fridge. So you need to use it within 5 days. But in the freezer, you got 6 months on it. Plenty of chicken to use in your favorite recipes. And like I said, save this video because we're going to make some soups with it, and we're going to make some casseroles with it, and a homemade chicken pot pie that is just absolutely wonderful. It's like better than anything you remember from childhood. So I hope this recipe has inspired you to kick that canned broth habit, and I hope you stick around with us for all the videos that we're going to use this recipe in. Appreciate you joining us in the Hillbilly Kitchen. Don't forget to click like and subscribe before you leave so that you get notifications and you don't miss any of those upcoming chicken recipes. Thanks for joining us in the Hillbilly Kitchen, and until next time, put God first.